Shoulder internal rotation exercises are single joint motions designed to target the internal rotators of the shoulder, particularly the subscapularis. There are numerous ways to perform this exercise. Here we see it demonstrated with a dumbbell. Notice that the arm is aligned with the elbow below the level of the shoulder, and with a cable. Notice here that the arm is braced with a towel in a slightly abducted position for better surface contact on the glenohumeral joint. Internal rotation exercises can be progressed to work in a variety of shoulder abduction positions. Only progress to this horizontal variation after the client has developed the ability to stabilize external rotators of the shoulder, particularly the teres minor and infraspinatus. There are numerous ways to perform this movement. Here we see the resistance is demonstrated with a dumbbell. Notice how a towel has been placed under the elbow to abduct the humerus slightly. This provides a more efficient movement between the contact surfaces of the shoulder joint. Again, this exercise can be progressed to work in a variety of positions of shoulder abduction. A cable can also be adjusted for any of these angles as well. The rotator cuff's primary job is to work with the larger shoulder and torso muscles. Thus, adding more integrated movements is quite effective in improving the functional development of these muscles. External rotation can also be performed with a dumbbell. Notice the dumbbell has been offset to provide rotational resistance and that the angle of motion is steeper. This angle. Dumbbell presses are two-joint motion exercises used to target the sternal pectoralis, clavicular pectoralis, anterior deltoid, and triceps, depending on the angle of press and direction of resistance. Sacrum should be on the bench. The client should pull the shoulder blades slightly together and then hold in a natural ready position. Align the arms straight up to the shoulders, elbows slightly flexed and rotated outward, with the hands and dumbbells perpendicular to the body. Instruct your client to press his feet into the ground to activate the hip extensors and then activate the inner core, resulting in a natural arch in the lower back. Instruct the client to begin inhaling slowly as he bends the elbows and lowers the arms while staying close to the horizontal wrists. An alternate motion can be used, which slows overall tempo and increases the isometric demands on the shoulder in the down position. A piston action results in a different neural pattern, providing more rotational challenges to the trunk and core muscles. Different sized dumbbells can be used to further challenge the core and trunk rotator demand for stability. To challenge the trunk, core, and even hip musculature to the maximum, simply have the client perform this exercise with only one arm at a time. You'll need to pay extra attention to the monitoring of the spine, and dumbbell presses can be done at varying degrees of incline from low angles to about 60 degrees of incline. Alternate, piston, offset, or one-arm variations are also available on the incline press. If higher angles than 60 to perform straight overhead angles, also known as front delt presses, try standing positions. These unload some of the compressive forces of the spine occurring in the seated version. They also require more trunk and core stability. Again, alternate, piston, offset, and one-arm variations are possible. Progressing to a lunge position increases hip and knee extensor demand and creates further balance challenges. A one-leg position is another option for increased proprioception action and additional stability challenges. This, of course, creates more trunk and core demand, but also targets the hip abductors, extensors, and ankle stabilizers as well. To maximize equilibrium challenge from this point, simply have the client perform this variation with the eyes closed, obviously during these movements. However, it's important that your client has first experienced dumbbell work in a stable environment, like the ones demonstrated on the bench, and he feels comfortable doing trunk work on the ball before progressing to this combination. Alignment and positioning are done. Stabilizing the ball are additional spotting options depending on the training goal. Are to be pulled together slightly and held in the ready position. Guide the client to a bar grip that allows for the arm to be flexed at slightly greater than 90 degrees when the upper arm is parallel to the floor. Arms back to the original position, being careful not to protract the scapula, lift the head, or hyperextend the spine as she slowly exhales and activates the core. After check positions of incline up to about a 60-degree angle. Higher angles may be used depending on the client's connective tissue limits, shoulder joint integrity, postural adaptations, and scapular-thoracic relationships. Cable chest press angle, while maintaining good posture and a natural arch in the lower back. The hands should be aligned straight out from the shoulder, with the elbows just slightly flexed and pointed out to the side. Check for proper spinal and scapular position. The chest should be out and the core fully activated. The client now inhales as she lets her arms be pulled out and up, keeping the wrist neutral. The elbows are pointed out toward the side until the upper arm reaches 0 degrees of horizontal ab. This exercise can be performed with an alternate, piston, or offset and single arm variations. Different stances, such as this lunge position, can also be adopted to add different stability challenges. It can be used to target different areas of the chest. Incline angle cable presses demand more recruitment of the fibers of the upper chest and anterior deltoid. Using this lunge position combined with a one-arm variation works the hip and knee extensors of the forward leg, while also challenging the trunk muscles to prevent the torso from rotating. Notice the grip has also been changed to an overhand grip, working shoulder, thus increasing the external rotator demand. Choose the variation that best meets the needs and abilities of your client. Approximately 90 degrees to the arms. Check for proper pelvic, spinal, and scapular position and Q-core activation. The client should inhale as he lowers his body to the point where the upper arm is almost parallel to the floor and the elbows are pointing outward. The shoulders should continue to work in the horizontal plane with the forearm aligned perpendicular to the body. Coach the client to hold this position, then begin to exhale and further activate the core as he slowly presses back up to the starting position. There are numerous variations to provide different challenges with push-ups. For starters, simply decrease the height of the anchor to increase gravitational resistance. One foot can also be kept elevated to increase stability challenges for balance and increase trunk and hip flexor demands. Placing the hands on an unstable object, such as a Swiss ball, or a wobble board will provide additional tilting response challenges. And for more advanced challenges of stability and intensity, have the client place his feet on the ball. Start with the lower leg, then work out to the toes. This may also be performed on one toe. Similar to all other presses, but the additional stability may be helpful when first teaching the client proper breathing and core activation techniques. It may also make it possible for greater recruitment of the targeted muscles due to the added neural availability. The cable lat extension is a single joint exercise that targets the latissimus dorsi and posterior deltoids. It also works the scapular depressors and retractors and is a less direct challenge to the spinal that works the postural muscles prior to performing heavier rowing exercises. Have the client assume the ready position and cue the lats for initial neural and lat control to determine beginning range of motion. The client to begin exhaling slowly while pulling the arm straight down, depressing and slightly retracting the scapula and further activating the core. Coach the client to pull the arms down until the bar hits the thigh, or as far as possible while maintaining. Cable rowing exercises are multiple joint motion exercises that work various combinations of the lats, teres major, rhomboids, mid and lower traps, posterior deltoids, and even shoulder external rotators. There are activate the core and maintain a natural arch in the lower back. Your client should now exhale slowly while pulling the navel toward the spine. Simultaneously, he should begin retracting the scapula and extending the shoulder, pulling the arms back and down toward the lower abdominal area until the elbow is aligned below the shoulder. Coach the client to hold the lat rows can be done with numerous variations, such as this one-armed version, which provides unilateral work and adds a rotational challenge to the trunk. You may choose to have the cable lat row performed in a standing position as shown here. This variation also targets the upper torso muscles. Be aware though, this version can also be done with one arm or in a lunge stance. This position drastically loads the hip extensors and some knee extensors of the lead leg. In fact, some individuals will feel more of the training effect in these areas than in the lats. Glute and quad overhead angles. Placing the client in a kneeling position creates a steeper angle of pull. You should coach the client to pull the arms and hands downward slightly as they are drawn to the body in order to decrease the amount of elbow flexion and bicep activation that usually accompanies overhead rows. Cable lat rows can be performed in a variety of positions, pulling from different angles and creating an almost endless number of rowing variations for targeting these muscles. As the angle of any row begins to align the humerus closer to the horizontal plane, fewer lat fibers are at an angle to assist with the pull. And to hold this position, continuing to pull the shoulder blades together, with the arms back, hands apart, and lifting the chest while further activating the core. As with the lat rows, using a cable and pulley system for rear delt exercises allows your client to pull at a variety of angles from numerous positions. This standing version adds more demand on the entire extensor chain. Different stances can be used to strengthen a position, target additional areas, and create new neurological challenges. Be sure the in relation to the straight vertical pull of gravity. Therefore, a certain amount of client hamstring flexibility and low back stability is necessary to attempt this aiding or flexing the spine, while inhaling for the next rep. You should be continually monitoring spinal and pelvic position and feeling for proper scapular rhythm. Cue the lats and inner core muscles. Coach done in a lunge stance to further challenge the hip and knee extensors of the forward leg. External braces can be removed for more balance and stability challenges. If enough leg and back stability strength is developed in proportion to the pulling muscles, a dumbbell row can be performed with two arms as you see here. At this point, a barbell could be used for a similar exercise. Notice the reverse shoulder width grip that is used. The client's shoulder positioning can be adjusted with any of these dumbbell lat row variations to target the rear delts. Of course, the weight load should be reduced appropriately to account for the loss of lat assistance and increased rotational challenge of the trunk. With the client exhaling and pulling the navel toward the spine. Simultaneously, the shoulder blades are pulled down, adducting the shoulder and flexing the elbows. As the arms are pulled down, the forearm should be aligned with the cable. The client should focus on rotate. Be sure to let the scapula rotate and elevate naturally. After setting the client's alignment and position, you should be monitoring spinal and shoulder position and scapular rhythm continually. Cue the lats and core activation, and spot on the center of the bar if needed. Lat pull-downs can be done at different angles and with different movement patterns. Lat pull-ups target the same muscle groups as the lat pull-downs. The bar grip alignment and positioning choices are the same as for the cable lat pull-downs toward the spine. The shoulder blades are pulled down, raising the body as far as possible, while keeping the forearm aligned with gravity. This position is held at the highest point on each rep, while the client attempts to lift the chest, activate the core, and rotate the scapula. The lats with grip working in the median plane. Notice the motion is quite different from the pull-up. The motion is rotational for both the shoulder joint and scapular functions. With machine, the dumbbell triceps extension is a single joint motion exercise designed to instruct your client to inhale slowly, while bending the elbows and lowering the arms. Be sure he maintains spinal positioning and limits abdominal distension by use of the trunk muscles and core activation. As with most dumbbell exercises, alternate piston and different tempos are always an option. This exercise can be performed also in varying degrees of decline or incline, depending on the goal. The higher the degree of shoulder flexion, the more the long head triceps are able to be. So a Swiss ball can be used to create almost any of these angles to add more trunk and hip stability demands. Cable tricep extensions are also the same single joint motion exercise designed to target the triceps muscle group. The same alignment and positioning is required for these variations as with the dumbbell. Here we see a Swiss ball used for support on this cable inclined version. As trunk and hip stability is proportionally developed, you can progress to the standing overhead position. Notice how the bow. One-arm variations may also be performed with any of these cable exercises. To decrease trunk and hip demand, and also limit long head tricep involvement through active insufficiency, have the client face the cable column. Notice how the upper arm is pulled and held back to maintain alignment and to allow increased by the base of support, and provide several anchor points against which to brace. Less work will be required by many of the stabilizers of the trunk, hips, and legs. While this machine seems to address alignment and positioning, monitor dumbbell biceps flexions is a single joint motion exercise designed to target the biceps muscle group. Exhale and further activate the core while simultaneously contracting the biceps and flexing the elbow. Have her pull the lower arm up as far as possible while relaxing the hands, and keepers such as wobble boards or stability discs can be used to increase stability and tilting response challenges. Wobble boards will target more hip adductors, while the stability discs will challenge the ankle muscles, particularly the pronators, while working the biceps. Different stances can also be selected for additional equilibrium challenges, such as simply standing on one leg. Lunge stances are another option that not only increase demand on the hip and knee extensors, but also place the shoulder in an increased position of flexion. Different degrees of supination can be utilized to emphasize the different elbow flexors. Performing them in full supination focuses on more biceps brachii. Notice the offset position that is being used, forcing and aligning the recruitment of the brachioradialis. Combinations can also be performed with this exercise if the training goal is consistent with the movement. Different shoulder positions can be achieved with the help of a bench. This incline angle places the shoulder into deeper shoulder extension when aligned with as the dumbbell version. Barbells force a level of constant supination, targeting more of the biceps brachii, depending on bar choice. Being a closed chain movement typically allows the user to work with higher weight loads, are another modality option that can easily be aligned to target the elbow flexors in a multitude of angles and with several variations. They are all still considered single joint motion exercises, but will challenge several different muscle groups, for cable bicep flexions are similar to those used with free weights. However, keep in mind the direction of resistance. If the client is facing the cable column, the arm will be aligned. Lunge stance will further challenge these postural muscles and increase the load on the lead leg hip and knee extensors. It will also further increase the degree of shoulder flexion and also set the arm in a flexed shoulder position, requiring different stability demands. This option still challenges the postural muscles, but gives the client steps in an extended shoulder position in order to keep the long head more active throughout the movement. The client should face away from the machine and align the upper arm with the cable. Machines typically provide the base of support and predetermine the path of movement, so they don't offer as much demand for proprioceptive activity and have limited alignment choices. Always check external rotation can also be performed with a dumbbell. Notice the dumbbell has been offset to provide rotational resistance and that the angle of motion is steeper. This angle, dumbbell presses are two joint motion exercises